Mila Kunis is proof that destiny does not begin with privilege, it begins with courage, and her story starts not in the bright lights of Hollywood, but in a small city in Ukraine where dreams of stardom seemed almost impossible. Born Mila Kunis in Chernovitsy, when it was still part of the Soviet Union, she grew up in a world far removed from American red carpets. Yet even as a child, she carried a quiet spark that would one day ignite screens across the world. And when her family made the life-changing decision to move to the United States, seeking freedom and opportunity, she was only 7 years old, unable to speak English, terrified yet hopeful, stepping into a new world where everything from language to culture felt foreign. And that moment, that leap into uncertainty, became the foundation of her resilience. Because starting over at such a young age forces strength into your bones, whether you are ready or not. She has spoken about how overwhelming it was to sit in classrooms, unable to understand her teachers or classmates, how isolation can shape a child. But instead of letting fear define her, she adapted, learned the language, observed the rhythms of American life, and slowly carved space for herself. And this early transformation built the adaptability that would later allow her to move between comedy and drama, between television and film, between vulnerability and boldness, without losing authenticity. Her journey into acting began almost accidentally when her parents enrolled her in acting classes simply as a way to help her meet friends and improve her English. Yet what began as a practical decision quickly revealed a natural talent, a charisma that cameras gravitated toward, and soon auditions followed, rejections followed too. And the grind of Hollywood, especially for a young immigrant girl, tested her persistence. But at just 14 years old, she landed the role that would change everything. Jackie Burkhart on That 70s Show, a role she reportedly secured after stretching the truth about her age, claiming she would be 18 by the time the show started. A bold move that signaled her determination to seize opportunity even when odds were stacked against her. And as Jackie, she became a household name, playing the spoiled yet lovable teenager with comedic timing that surprised critics and audiences alike. Yet what many people didn't see was the pressure of growing up on camera, of balancing adolescence with fame, of navigating an industry that often reduces young women to stereotypes. And still she endured, learning professionalism, discipline, and the complexities of fame before she was old enough to fully understand them. While the world saw glamour, she saw long hours, script rehearsals, industry expectations, and the constant need to prove she was more than just the pretty girl on a sitcom. And that hunger to be taken seriously would later define her career choices, pushing her toward roles that shattered expectations. When Family Guy came calling and she voiced Meg Griffin, replacing the original actress, she stepped into animation with confidence, building a parallel career that showcased her vocal range and comedic instincts. And even though Meg was often the family's punching bag in the storyline, Kunis infused the character with subtle humanity, turning what could have been a flat role into something layered, proving that even in voice acting she could command attention. As her career expanded into film, she embraced romantic comedies like Friends with Benefits, where she displayed sharp wit and emotional realism, showing audiences she could balance humor with heart. But it was her performance in Black Swan that silenced doubters completely, portraying Lily, the seductive and mysterious rival ballerina, She underwent intense physical training, losing weight, enduring bruises, pushing her body to limits that mirrored the psychological intensity of the film. And critics praised her for delivering a performance that was both raw and magnetic, earning award nominations and proving she was capable of serious dramatic depth. And this transformation marked a turning point because it showed the industry that Mila Kunis was not confined to one box. Beyond her on-screen achievements, her personal life became part of public fascination, especially her relationship and eventual marriage to her former co-star, Ashton Kutcher, a real-life love story that unfolded years after their sitcom romance, capturing fans' imaginations. Yet even within that spotlight, she maintained a grounded perspective, often emphasizing privacy, family values, and humility rooted in her immigrant upbringing. And what makes her story powerful is not simply the fame or wealth, but the journey from linguistic isolation to global recognition, from uncertainty to influence, from being underestimated to commanding respect in Hollywood, because at every stage she reinvented herself without abandoning her core identity. She once said that coming to America was like being blind and deaf at the same time, yet from that vulnerability she built confidence. And that metaphor alone defines her trajectory. She entered an unfamiliar world and taught herself how to see, how to speak, how to thrive. And as audiences continue to watch her evolve through projects that range from comedy to thriller, from blockbuster franchises to independent films, what resonates most is her authenticity, her refusal to chase fame for fame's sake, her willingness to step back when needed, and her consistent return to work that challenges her creatively. In an industry obsessed with reinvention, she mastered the art of evolution without losing relatability, and that balance is rare. Because many stars burn bright and fade quickly, but Mila Kunis built a career on calculated risks, quiet resilience, and strategic choices, and her immigrant story continues to inspire millions who feel out of place, who struggle with language barriers, who fear starting over, reminding them that beginnings do not determine endings, that discomfort can be the birthplace of greatness, and that sometimes the boldest act is simply believing you belong in rooms that once felt unreachable. And as her journey unfolds further, one thing remains undeniable. She is not just a Hollywood actress. She is living proof that courage, combined with relentless effort, can transform even the most uncertain start into an extraordinary legacy. Mila Kunis did not simply transition from sitcom star to serious actress by accident. It was a deliberate evolution shaped by patience, self-awareness, and an almost strategic refusal to be trapped by early fame. Because after years of playing Jackie on that 70s show, she understood something many young actors never realize until too late. Popularity can become a cage if you let it. And so, when the series ended, she faced a crossroads that could have defined her permanently as a nostalgic television figure, or propelled her into long-term relevance. And instead of chasing every flashy offer, she chose roles that stretched her, that allowed her to experiment with tone and genre, stepping into comedies like Forgetting Sarah Marshall, where she played Rachel, a character warm yet grounded, natural yet magnetic, and audiences began seeing a different side of her, less exaggerated, more authentic, more reflective of the quiet strength she carried in real life. That performance became a turning point because it revealed her ability to anchor a story emotionally while still delivering humor. And soon after, her role in Friends with Benefits opposite Justin Timberlake solidified her as a leading lady capable of commanding both box office numbers and critical praise. Yet even at the height of mainstream romantic comedy success, she pivoted sharply into darker territory with Black Swan, a psychological thriller that demanded physical sacrifice and emotional intensity far removed from light-hearted scripts, and her portrayal of Lily was bold, unpredictable, and fearless, earning award nominations and proving she was not afraid to risk public perception for artistic credibility. What makes her journey compelling is that behind each glamorous premiere was discipline, behind each red carpet smile was relentless rehearsal, and behind each success was an immigrant mindset that never allowed comfort to replace hunger. Because when you grow up, learning a new language and navigating unfamiliar systems, adaptability becomes instinct, and that instinct guided her through Hollywood's shifting tides. Beyond film, her long-standing role as Meg Griffin on Family Guy quietly built one of the most consistent aspects of her career, a reminder that longevity sometimes hides in places audiences overlook. And while animated voice work may not always generate headlines, it created stability and demonstrated her versatility, reinforcing that she could succeed in multiple formats without oversaturating herself. Her partnership and eventual marriage, Tosh Tunkacher, added another dimension to her public image, a narrative that felt almost cinematic to co-stars from a teenage sitcom reconnecting years later to build a family. Yet despite media fascination, she maintained a protective boundary around her private life, emphasizing motherhood, balance, and intentional living over constant exposure. And that restraint, in an era dominated by oversharing, strengthened her brand rather than weakening it. As streaming platforms reshaped entertainment, she adapted again, appearing in projects that aligned with her growth rather than simply chasing visibility. And her involvement in comedies like Bad Moms showed her willingness to embrace imperfection, portraying modern womanhood with humor and honesty, resonating deeply with audiences who saw reflections of their own struggles in her performance.